All right, it's about that time. Let's bring in our A-team, and it is A-team. Judy Miller is adjunct fellow at the Manhattan Institute for Policy Research, Pulitzer Prize-winning author and journalist, and Fox News contributor. James Freeman from the Wall Street Journal, and also a Fox News contributor, and Ed Henry, our chief national correspondent and recipient of a new award.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
And I think you love Easter, so I don't know why he's picking on you.
Thank you for that, Ed. All right.
We had the war on paper yesterday.
Now it's a war on
This
Easter?
is not the war on Easter.
All right, good.
Yeah.
So where do you think, I mean, Ed, you didn't get
Where do
sleep
we
last
begin?
night. I mean, I saw you up late last night to this morning. Ed, your thoughts?
And that was just the phone calls I was getting from Bill asking me about every live shot because we compare notes. I mean, I just want to take a deep breath. You know, it's sort of like it's over, and the Democrats don't quite know it yet. I mean, the legal fight's over. Yes, now it's a political battle, but the door is shut on collusion. They've not just said, Democrats, that there were allegations of collusion, but for 2 years they've said there was evidence of collusion. Robert Mueller, with thousands of subpoenas, hundreds of witnesses, and all the rest, says no. That door's closed. Obviously, the obstruction piece of this is more complicated, which actually makes me wonder why Bob Mueller didn't, after all this money and time, make a call and say, this is where I think it should have gone. But instead, leaving it open, I think the Attorney General's now shut.
Wild speculation question here, but did he not make a call because of the pressure of those around him on his team?
I think this is the way the FBI traditionally operated. They gathered the facts and then they turned it over to the Attorney General to make a conclusion about whether or not someone should be...
But Ed's point is they gathered plenty of facts on the Russia side.
Look, the Democrats and people who are anti-Trump said from the beginning, Mueller is our guy. They hung everything on Mueller. When Mueller didn't do what he wanted them to do, they have been left in the cold. And that's the problem now, the challenge for the Democrats. What do you do now that Mueller has refused to do what they wanted him to do?
Yeah, and I think this is kind of, we can't take too seriously this new subpoena. It's coming so quickly after the publication of the report, so you know it wasn't done out of careful consideration of the parts that were redacted, right?
Was released, though.
They passed it in
They've been planning to, but okay, so now we get it, and it's largely unredacted. And what's been redacted? It's mainly big sections about the structure of the Internet Research Agency, et cetera. So Mueller has told us no Americans, not just no Trump campaign, not just no Donald Trump, no Americans were involved in this. What do you think you're going to learn about Trump from the structure of this Moscow agency? It has nothing to tell you because he's already told you that there were no Trump people
And if Mueller wants to say it's just the facts, ma'am, and I'm not going to make a call, I'd argue that on Section 1, on collusion, he did make a call. No American colluded with the Russians. So he did make a call, and thus there'll be no criminal charges. On obstruction, it's like, well, there's this, there's that, on one hand, on the other hand, and I think the Attorney General's saying,
does it behoove Democrats to continue with this? This is the latest that we heard from Nancy Pelosi on talk of impeachment.
Let me assure you that whatever the issue and challenge that we face, the Congress of the United States will honor its oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, to protect our democracy. We believe that the first Article 1, the legislative branch, has a responsibility of oversight of our democracy, and we will exercise that.
So what does that say to you?
That says she's punting. And Steny Hoyer, the number 2 in the House, was even clearer about it.
Not worth it.
Not worth it. Let the voters decide in 2020. And I think that the wisest part of the party, that is the centrist part of the party, and its leadership, do not want to go where Adam and Jerry want to go.
You know, it's interesting. I watched a lot of reaction yesterday, as we all did. I'm just consuming this and trying to understand it in our own way. Adam Schiff was on CNN around 5:30 last night. He was on with Wolf Blitzer. And Wolf asked him repeatedly about this impeachment thing. He did not give a clear answer. And what he seemed to say was, yeah, there's a political equation to this as well as a legal question, which we all fully understand. And then what Blitzer said was, you've got the votes in the House, so if you want to do it, you can tell us now, you're going for it or not. This is the internal debate the left is having now.
Yeah, and I think that reflects the Pelosi comments as well. And I think they're thinking this weekend about how do you please the left wing of the party, show them that you were resisting Donald Trump without completely alienating centrist voters by making the next 2 years about continuing to try to overturn the results of the 2016 election. I think she knows which way to go.
Enter the words of freshman Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez on impeachment. She says this: "Many know I take no pleasure in discussions of impeachment. I didn't campaign on it, and I rarely discuss it unprompted. We all prefer working on our priorities, pushing Medicare for all, tackling student loans, and a Green New Deal. But the report, Ed, squarely puts this on our doorstep."
Well, look, I was watching The Five yesterday, so I don't know what Adam Schiff said. Let me just put that on the table.
You know, easy.
Let me just be honest, right? But in all seriousness, you know, I think the first part of the AOC tweet is sort of like, you know, she wants to jump in on impeachment, but she's actually making a smart point later about getting the student loans, and if you want to pick immigration, infrastructure, the economy. Here's the point. Let's actually talk about real issues, and I think that's ultimately why Pelosi and Hoyer are feeling that pressure. Their base wants to resist, and it hasn't gotten them very far. And think to that 60 Minutes interview. Let me put that on the table. A few days back, where Leslie Stahl was asking Nancy Pelosi what they've gotten done. Humana. They haven't gotten anything done in 100 days. She said, well, that's not always the barometer. It's you need 200 days or whatever she said.
Here's the point.
They got to start getting stuff done.
The reason why that point is so relevant now is because you're away on Easter break. You come back and you work for 3 months, but this is going to take up so much of their oxygen for that 3 months. Then you're gone for August. Yeah. And now you're deep, and you are thick into the race for 2020.
And the race is already on.
You guys stand by. Speaking of which, want to get a quick time out here because we've got a potentially major announcement about 2020. Joe Biden apparently, reportedly set to enter the race. If true, he would be number 20 on the Democratic side. Doug McElway's tracking that down live in Washington. What have you found out there, Doug? Good morning.
Morning, Bill. The AP is now confirming an Atlantic magazine report of Biden announcing next Wednesday. No real surprise here. It's been long anticipated, especially with Biden recently seen with film crews at a few different locations, including his childhood home in Scranton, Pennsylvania. His announcement will come via video message, we're told, and he remains atop the Real Clear Politics average of polls among Democratic contenders at 30% support to Bernie Sanders' 22.5%. Beto stands at 8.8%, and Kamala Harris in at fourth at 8.5%. The recent spate of Me Too accusations against Biden seems not to have had any lasting damage, especially after his promise to pull back on some of the touchy-feely stuff.
I just want you to know I had permission to hug Lonnie. We had permission. I don't know, man.
Yesterday, Biden spoke at a Boston Stop and Shop grocery store where unionized workers are on strike. His remarks harken back to an Obama-era message of, you didn't build that.
Workers are not being treated across the board with dignity. They're not being treated like they matter. And let me get something straight with you all. Wall Street bankers and CEOs did not build America. You build America. We build America. Ordinary middle-class people build America.
And now Fox News can confirm that he is indeed going to be announcing next Wednesday. His biggest liability, as we all know, may be his age. He's 76 years old. If elected, he would become the oldest president to take office. The Atlantic speculates that he may accompany his video message with a rollout rally, perhaps at the Philadelphia Museum of Art site of Sylvester Stallone's famous Rocky scene, or perhaps in Charlottesville, Virginia, scene of that 2017 white supremacist rally where counter-protester Heather Heyer was killed.
Thank you, Doug. Doug McElway from Washington. We can add to this a moment ago. FoxNews.com now confirms Joe Biden will be in the race officially next week. So we've got that. Back with Judy and James and Hanson Ed on our A-team. Let's frame it this way. Here's what the Atlantic says on Biden. The primary, Biden believes, will be easier than some might think. He sees a clear path down the middle of the party, especially with Bernie Sanders occupying a solid 20% of the progressive base and most of the other candidates fighting for the rest. James, we'll start with you.
Yeah, there is definitely a hunger among the Democratic electorate. Despite a lot of, I think, legitimate media coverage of the AOC types, there is an appetite in the Democratic Party for a moderate. And you see that in the polling, even when he's not running. I think ultimately he may have a challenge in that he's not a great candidate. We've seen that in his previous runs for president. And if people want a moderate, it's possible some of the other options will break through. I think of a John Delaney, who's maybe a smarter, sharper, more accomplished option for Democrats who want a moderate candidate.
What do you think, Ed?
Problem.
Today?
Who?
John Delaney's a businessman.
Former congressman.
In all seriousness, he's legit.
He's going to get a shot like a lot of them in debates, but obviously Biden brings a lot of money and name ID, et cetera.
He does. And the name ID, I think, is why he's at the top of the polls early. And his problem, among others, may be his best day could be day one, you know, where he's at the top of the polls. Then you get in there and they start bringing up some of the old issues. They go back to the hugging and kissing. There's all kinds of things that are going to come in. And I think Sanders is a bigger force than that article suggests, that Biden just thinks, oh, there's this great path in the middle. A, Sanders is more formidable than the Democratic Party assumed early on. And B, I'm not sure, James, that there's a real hunger in the Democratic Party for a moderate. The hunger's for the resist, take down Trump. We want blood.
It appears that's where they are.
For example, you look at the Gallup polling, a lot of Democrats identify themselves as moderate or even conservative. Now, arguing in your case would be Howard Schultz and Michael Bloomberg looking at a lot of data and deciding they couldn't run as Democrats. Sure. So we're about to find out. But I think there is a market here, and that's part of why Biden is number one and number two.
Definitely, there are some moderates in the party.
But the energy, the dynamism of the party is with the left wing of the party.
You're exactly right
and
about
that's
Judith.
the problem that Joe Biden faces.
How much concern, you think about the New York Times piece from 2 days ago, how much concern is there, center-left portion of the Democratic Party, how concerned are they with Bernie having a real shot at this?
I think the center is very concerned about Bernie, number one. He's the one who truly, truly bothers them because he can use the I was robbed argument. I could have beaten Trump the last time. You went with the safe, experienced bet. She was a terrible candidate. Yeah. Let's not make that same mistake. That's the danger for the Biden argument.
Something else on the table? I'm going to tell you a little secret, which is I was on the A team. This is a true story.
Tell us.
A little secret. Several weeks ago, and I made the point that I was talking to a Republican from Pennsylvania who's a formidable person in the state, and said that the only Democrat he's worried about is Joe Biden, that all the others would be on the left, and the one who could challenge President Trump, this Republican told me privately, in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, would be Joe Biden. And I said that on the A team. And a friend of mine texted me after the segment and said he was sitting with the president, watching the segment, and the president said, I'm not buying that, because every time Joe Biden has been in the race on his own, without Obama, he's been single digits. So that's directly from the Oval Office. That's what they believe. They could be wrong this time.
He's got an opportunity if he wants to run in the center, but don't overrate his appeal in the Midwest. He moved out of the Midwest during the Eisenhower administration.
All right, they call him the A-team for a reason.
That's right. James, is it formidable or formidable? What is it?
He likes to pick.
I do the latter.
You know, I think both are acceptable, and since he's so handsome, I'm going to let him go either way.
Happy
Thank you, James.
Easter.
Good save.
We tease him, and then he gets us back.
Thank you, Judith.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, team.